All right. Hey, folks. So today's topic is going to be about excuses. Excuses which prevent us from reaching our goals in bodybuilding, strength training, hypertrophy, and all the rest. I think from the off, it's important to recognize that there are genuine excuses out there. And I think it's important to recognize right from the beginning, the reasons that we give to not do the things that we should be doing to support our goals, they can be valid reasons. So not every reason that you might give is just because you're lazy. I think it's important to recognize that people have lives. They have reasons for not doing things. However, despite those reasons, which can be valid, it's important to push through and try and do what you need to do regardless. For example, there's a guy at the gym who's constantly asking me for advice. He's done it a few times already, and he'll ask me a question, I'll give him some advice, but generally he rejects the advice, and it normally comes down to his kids. He normally says, well, when you've got kids, it's really difficult. And so that's how our conversation has ended pretty much the last few times I've spoken. And I do wonder sometimes what his children would think if they realized that they were the excuse for everything that's wrong with daddy's life. Imagine actually telling them, look, you're the reason that your dad's in poor health and he's fat and he's out of shape. He seems to blame everything on his kids. Now, don't get me wrong, kids take up a lot of time. They're a lot of work, of course they are. But to use that as an excuse to put everything on hold, I think is maybe a little bit excessive. And we can look at the events of the last few years as one of the greatest reasons for us not to reach our fitness goals. We had the big C word, right? Over the last few years, everything was locked down. Nobody could have predicted that. And if anything, that was the greatest excuse that we as a global population had to just lay off the gym routine, get on the pizza and burgers and do what we want. I mean, in this country, the government was actually paying us to go out and eat during certain parts of those few years. So that was the best possible reason to just give up and go and get fat, do no exercise and all that stuff. However, we all still have a choice, and it's important to recognize that there's always going to be challenges which we can't even predict. We might see a 6-month stretch ahead of us and think, okay, I want to get in shape, but this is coming up, somebody's wedding and this and Christmas and New Year's and whatever else. The reality is there is no 3 to 6 month period of your life which is going to be completely free of these events. So using them as a scapegoat not to achieve your goals and not to do what you're supposed to be doing, it's not good practice, because what tends to happen is it becomes easier to give into the excuses the next time and the next time and the next time. And then you become one of those people who are always giving into their excuses, rather than one of those people who you look at and think, wow, they're just on it all the time. And they're constantly, slowly but surely making progress towards their goals. Whereas I'm over here and I'm constantly restarting every Monday. It's very different. So we are all going to have challenges. Nobody has a perfect, easy life. However, it's how we respond to those challenges that is really important. And it's important to recognize, I'm not trying to diminish anybody's reasons and excuses. All of your reasons are valid. Just like the past couple of years, we all went through that. But it is how we deal with these things that affect how we do throughout life, because we're never going to have a free run. So I want to just showcase an example of that. There's a guy called Doug Hepburn, who some of you may have heard of. At one point in time, he was considered to be one of the strongest men on the planet. Now, Doug Hepburn had a fused ankle, which meant he had greatly reduced flexibility in his ankle. Now, he went on to become a championship world-beating weightlifter, which was incredible. They didn't even think he would have any level of strength or be able to walk without assistance. Doug Hepburn went against the odds, didn't let that hold him back, and he went on to be a world beater. An amazing story, absolutely phenomenal. He could have easily used it as an excuse. He didn't let that hold him back at all. And I just think that's a great example. So the next step really is trying to figure out, well, how do I stay motivated when things are going wrong? How do I stay motivated when the road looks so unclear? So I want to just talk about a few things and a few techniques that you guys can use and that I use as well. The first one is goal setting. Now, goal setting theory, it suggests that setting specific, realistic goals can significantly improve your motivation and your performance. The way that I always think about it is that a good long-term goal reduces the friction between your long-term vision and your daily habits. Because let's face it, we all have motivational ups and downs during the course of the day. I know I do. Sometimes you don't feel like going to the gym, you have to do it anyway. Other times you're raring to go. So you have these ups and downs. Whereas if you have a long-term vision, a long-term goal, it reduces the friction between these day-to-day activities and the ups and downs that we all naturally have. And it means that we're less likely to use those ups and downs in motivation as rationalization for not doing a task which is part of our broader goal. So goal setting, I think, is super important. I normally break it down into long-term goals, that is more of a vision of what you want to be and where you want to be, as well as medium and short-term goals. Short-term goals could be as brief as, what do I need to do daily this week? A medium-term goal could be every 3 months, every 6 months, something like that. Now, the next one is procrastination and avoidance. Research in psychology indicates that people avoid tasks or delay them which they find challenging and uncomfortable. So the key to this is trying to make the tasks that you do enjoyable. Now, this is where I'm not really a fan of just shouting at people and calling them wusses and saying, you've got to get motivated and all that stuff, because that's not very pleasant. And ultimately, for long-term success, the things which are conducive to your lifestyle and conducive to your goals, you need to enjoy doing them. You can't hate every minute of training in the gym. Otherwise, you're probably not going to have a good time. You've got to try and find some enjoyment in what you do. A super silly thing that I do is I generally train in vests. And if it's leg day, I train in shorts. Now, call me narcissistic or whatever, but it's part of my motivation. Hard leg day, I'm going to the gym, I've got my shorts on, I want to see my quads. I've got good legs, so I want to see them and I want everyone else to see them because it motivates me to get through a hard leg session. It makes a hard activity more enjoyable. You can do the same thing with food, your cardio, whatever it is that you need to do. Make the activity slightly more enjoyable. And the final one in this section is self-determination theory. This theory proposes that intrinsic motivation is far more valuable and far more sustainable than extrinsic motivation. So that is like rewards or external pleasures and things like that. Internal motivation in fitness, things like personal growth, health improvements, your own personal goals, they all help you to stay motivated and committed when facing challenges. So I encourage you to look at all three of these things that I've talked about: self-determination theory, procrastination and avoidance research, as well as goal setting and achievement research. Next, I want to just take this back to you as the viewer, and I want to talk about finding your inner drive. Now, I've been asked on many podcasts, what is my drive? Why did I start lifting? Why did I go so deep into lifting when I first started? And I think my answer has changed over the years because I've realized more about myself. And what I want to encourage you guys to do is start to consider what your inner drive is. Why are you training? If you had asked me when I was 18 years old, it would have been because I wanted to get girls. I would have unashamedly said, look, I want to get girls. Now, later in life, I very much realized I find a lot of security in being strong because through various reasons, such as the death of my father when I was younger, I didn't feel very strong when I was young. And so when I got older and I was independent, it made me feel comfortable to be the strongest person in the room. And that was my initial desire, to train and compete at a high level. It wasn't for trophies or glory. It was because I didn't like the feeling of being weak. You have to understand your inner drive, your motivation, and sometimes it takes some soul searching. Discover your reason for why you started down the fitness route in the first place. And I think it's important to keep that close to your heart. Visualize what success means to you based on that goal. Track your progress as well and celebrate your victories. These are all important things. In conclusion, what this video is about is the idea that there is always going to be a reason or an excuse, and that is not to be diminished. I'm not out here calling anyone lazy. I understand things get in the way. My point is, in all this, there are always going to be things that are going to get in the way, things that we can't predict. Nobody predicted the last few years. We all went through it. But that is still no reason to sacrifice your goals. It is still a reason to give it your best and do your best and honor your goals. And we also discussed, and I suggested a few ways you can do that, including looking at self-determination theory, as well as goal setting and procrastination, and why we might do those things. And I also suggested that you may want to find what your actual own motivation is. What is your goal? What is the reason? What is your why? It's important to hold on to that because that will really get you through when things are difficult. So I'm going to call it there. I do encourage you to like, subscribe, hit the bell notification if you haven't done so already. And if you are interested in coaching, then get in touch. There's a link in the description. Peace out. Have a good one.